just before we start with Caroline, all I'd ask from you guys, I'll probably stop from time to time to have a chat with you guys. But while I'm coaching Caroline, don't type anything into the chat and don't say anything. We'll take about 10 to 20 minutes, and Caroline's going to get whatever she gets. You guys are going to have an experience of seeing me doing this stuff, and then we can unpack it afterwards. Sound good? Okay, let's go for it. So Caroline, nice to meet you.
Andrew, pleasure.
And
my pleasure.
Caroline, you and I haven't met before, I don't think, but I read through your diagnostic. My question for you would be, what would you love to have happen as a result of this conversation? What would be a great outcome for you?
A great outcome for me would be, I loved when you were talking about that deeper level, not the verbal, the deeper, what was the word you used, foundation. Just for me to connect with that, to have a sense of conviction and motivation in terms of where I'm going next with my work.
Got it. Well, I guess the thing that occurs to me right away, now let me just talk to these guys for a second. So I heard Caroline say what she just said, and she said, connect with that, whatever you called it, Jamie, so I could have a deeper sense of conviction and motivation as I move forward with my work. So immediately, remember, I don't know what's going on here. And so I'm listening for, what am I curious about? What would I like to know as I listen to her? What would I like to know more about? And as I think about it, I'm like, what I'm curious about is, well, not only what does she mean by conviction and motivation, because I have a sense of that, right? I know what it is to be motivated, and I know what it is to have conviction, but I'm curious about, where does that stuff come from? So that's what I'm going to ask her about. So Caroline, what's your, and we can take them one at a time. When a person feels deeply convicted about something, like fully convinced about something, how do you account for that?
How do I account in the sense of what might that look or feel like, or?
Well, no, like why, if you were to be faced with two people, and one of them is, deeply convicted about something, and the other one is kind of like, well, part of me does, part of me doesn't. What's the difference between, what's going on for them that's different? Like, why would one person be deeply convicted about something and the other one kind of be, not entirely?
So it's the clarity and the foundation and the grounding that they're actually standing in, talking about what they do or love or.
Oh, got it. I like that. So it's the clarity of the kind of foundation or the ground they're standing on as they talk about what they do or what they love. So what is it that you like? Because what I heard you say is you want to have more conviction and motivation as you move forward. What is it that you're as you think about what you do, what is it that you love? What is it that you're passionate about? Or what is it that you have a kind of what we might call a deep knowing about?
There's something more to the word in change. I am very passionate about people seeing for themselves change or insight within themselves. I love having conversations with people around that happen organically, very naturally. But sometimes the minute I put a coaching context or payment even sometimes on those conversations, then it doesn't feel organic or natural.
Got it. So I'm going to talk to these guys for a second. So this is so interesting to me, right? So I'm listening. Remember, I want to find out from people, how do they account for distinctions, right? So I listened to Caroline, and she says, I want to have that conviction and motivation as I move forward. And I'm like, well, like, I know what those words mean, but what does she means, and how does she account for it? I said, well, how do you account for that? And she says, what do you mean? How would I know it? I'm like, no. Like, how do you just, how do you make sense of that? So what I'm trying to feel for is, what's her understanding of what explains conviction and motivation, right? So then she said, and so then I said, what are you, she said, it's the way someone talks about, she sort of still didn't understand. So I said, well, if you got two people and one of them's totally convicted about what they're saying and the other's a bit meh, what's the difference? She said, well, one of them, it's about how passionate they are and about what they care about what they're, so she's talking about that. I like that. So I asked her, what are you passionate about? What do you care about? And she said, well, I love, and I believe her. She said, I love having conversations organically with people about what's possible for them and what changes their lives. I listened to her. I'm like, that sounds true. No issue there at all. She said, but when I stick a coaching context around it or involve payment or whatever, then it turns pooey. I can't remember the exact word she used, but something suitable for following a back. So this is not a conviction problem, and I doubt it's a motivation problem. That's my guess. So here's my working hypothesis. She doesn't have an issue with conviction or passion or any of that stuff. She doesn't have an issue with motivation or any of that stuff, though we might explore motivation independently. The challenge she's got is she's got something she's passionate about, she wants to do, and when she tries to think about it in a way that's commercial or a coaching context or that sort of thing, it, for whatever reason, activates a bunch of fears, insecurities, doubts, whatever it might be. So that's my working hypothesis. Let's check in with Caroline and see how I'm doing. Caroline, what do you think of my working hypothesis?
I think there's part truth in that, and then there is part in terms of, in my own grounding, I'm still not, yes, I am passionate, convicted to a level, but don't have clarity in clarity or direction. Maybe it's too big picture and not enough detail.
Well, let me check. When you say too big picture, what do you, it sounds like, though I could be wrong, you have clarity and direction at a big picture level. Is that true?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So at the big picture level?
Yeah.
Yeah. So really love, do love that element of people discovering for themselves what's possible. Have spent years in terms of mental health, mental wellness, and just absolutely love exploring different ways for people to have insight around that. Well, maybe that's too big picture. It's why
no, that's fine. I like the big picture. Keep going.
I kind of hesitated on the word, earlier in terms of change, because maybe that's the big picture word. But I'm going to throw this out. I don't know if there's meaning in it or not. I love what I do, but not calling it work, in the sense of random conversations, organic conversations, ad hoc conversations. I'm really, really passionate about it. But yeah, would just love not to work. But
now,
for to be having those conversations too.
So I just want to make sure I understand the distinctions. Do you mean, when you say love not to work, what do you mean by that? So let me just speak to these guys for a sec.
Yeah.
It's clear to me that I don't know what Caroline means with big chunks of that, even though I've got certain themes that I'm absolutely bang on with, right? Like, so now I know that her theory is that she lacked conviction and motivation, but that at a big picture level, she's passionate about having conversations and helping people see possibilities and that sort of thing. But as soon as we put a work context around it, it kind of constricts and is no fun and that sort of thing is what it seems to me like. And so her theory is that she needs more of the detail or something, but I'm going to check in with her. When you say, but not work, what do you mean, Caroline?
So I mean, I've been self-employed 12 years now at different kind of levels. If it wasn't for finances, I wouldn't work, but I would still love to be engaged at a level of those conversations, running kind of workshops or, you know, helping out where I can't, serving. Yeah, serving in whatever just felt quite natural, whatever felt quite right at a particular time, and whatever is really interesting to me where I can make a difference.
And just so I can be on the same page with you, why don't you want to work?
Why don't I enjoy? Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know. Why don't I want to work? Because I enjoy flexibility. I enjoy staying. I enjoy not having a structure. I enjoy just showing up. But quite often not within a structure.
I mean, do you mean like you don't like houses and things like that because they're too much structure?
No, like timeframes and outcomes.
So just to make sure we're on the same page, you'd be happy with teaching workshops if a group of people spontaneously appear in a place where you happen to be. But if they had to set a date and time to be there, that would be a problem. I mean, it's okay that comedian Dave Chappelle, he famously walked away from his Comedy Central contract worth tens of millions of dollars, said he didn't want to work with him. He just wanted to be free. And then from then on, he would just go, he started just showing up in the middle of parks. He would literally put down turn a bucket upside down, stand up on it and start doing comedy performances and start from scratch. So, and that was how he started the most recent 10 years of his career. And he's now one of the most successful comedians in the world. And he was doing that without giving people times and dates and that sort of thing. So it's absolutely possible. I'm just not sure that that's exactly what you want.
No, it's not. And because there's something kind of deeper than that. And I love that idea too. I love something that can move, is really flexible, just shows up. So I do love that element. I don't think I have a problem with showing up at a specific time and date.
Oh, well, that's good.
But relying on it in terms of like a source of income, I do is the element that I don't like having to. Yeah, I don't like. There are some aspects of work that I feel like I have to do and get paid for in order to finance bills and day-to-day living. That's the bit that I don't like, I think.
Now, let me check. Is it the fact that you have to do them, or is it the fact that they're things you don't like doing?
I have to do them.
Well, you don't have to do them.
Well, finances might dictate otherwise.
Well, finances, as you'll find out if you explore, they don't have lips, so they can't dictate anything. Like,
well, true, yeah.
No, but I'm being really serious here. You see, here's the thing I know. For any of us, if we experience a lack of choice, a lack of freedom, that feels constricting, right? And so it can seem to us like we have no choice, but you do. You do. You may have lost sight of the fact that it's a choice. Now, I'm not just being a dick, by the way. Like I'm talking almost at a spiritual level. Like if you wanted to, Caroline, you could decide that you're not going to leave your seat for for the foreseeable future, and there would be implications of that. But it would be a choice, and no one would come and say, Caroline, you have to go to work. Or I mean, they might do, but they would be unlikely to march you at gunpoint into the office. So there's a choice taking place. So I guess the thing that's occurring to me in the background is, I wonder if Caroline's got the idea that if she started her own business doing coaching or the stuff that she's been doing on a mental health first aider basis, I wonder if Caroline thinks that that would be imbued with the same feeling of have to. Is that what you believe?
No. Not that I would have to.
Well, what if you were to create something like, it's kind of interesting, actually. There's this writing team that I subscribe to their stuff, and these are guys who used to work in the heavy industry world, and then they decided they were going to become basically bloggers. So that's what they do now. They write about energy and that sort of thing. But they said, oh, we're doing the work of our lives here. This is the work we're here to do. And so anything we're doing it because we get to do it. We get to do it. And if there's something that we just don't enjoy doing, then we do our best to find someone else to take care of that. But it's gradual, on the first day of business, they had to do everything because there was no one else to do it, and there was no cash flow to pay someone else to do it. But over time, as the passion and love of doing the work they get to do has filled everything they're up to, it's become easier and easier to let go of the things that they don't want to do. So it strikes me that for you, Caroline, if you were going to work, the necessary condition would be that you're doing the work you get to do rather than the work you have to do. I mean, that's just my idea on it, but what's your sense of it?
Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree with that, so that it doesn't even feel like work. I guess the missing piece of the puzzle would be what is that? I never know. I've jumped from NLP, timeline therapy, hypnosis, coaching, mental health first aid, and I never have that sense of, yeah, this is it, or that sense of belief, or that conviction, yeah, this is it.
Well, here's the cool thing, and you hit the nail on the head. You said it wouldn't feel like work. And here's my question for you. What's your best guess at where the feeling of something feeling like work comes from?
Say that again.
What's your best guess? My question is, what's your best guess at where the feeling of something feeling like work comes from?
Without going intellectual, I'm just going to respond with my heart.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. That there's a woman called Layla Denmark who is a pediatrician in the USA. And at a certain point in her life, she was the USA's oldest practicing doctor. She was like 105 and she was still practicing. And they asked her what her secret was. And she said, I love my work. She said, once you start doing work you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Caroline, I'm just going to check in with these guys. Guys, is anyone noticing like we've kind of dropped into that quiet feeling? Anyone else noticing that? Yeah. So I don't know what's landing for Caroline. I'll ask her in a second because calibration, right? But that feeling space, that's where I want to be going with people, because I know that when we're in that feeling space, and all credit to Caroline, she said, you know, without going intellectual, I'd say my heart. Well, I could just, as soon as she said it, it was like we dropped into that deeper space. You know, I know, listening to her, that she's passionate about making a difference to others. And that until now, she's had it organized in such a way in her mind that if she's doing it in a professional context, it kind of, or in the professional context she's had in mind, kind of loses the juice, loses the joy. And my sense is that until now, she hadn't realized that she could do it in such a way that brings all of her heart into it. For whatever reason, that my guess is there's something about either the charging or the administration or just the business of it or something that has seemed like that couldn't be done in a way that was fully aligned with what she is so passionate about, what she knows to be true about people. That's my guess. So I'm working at the level of what's my best guess at what's going on here. And by the way, remember when I said to Caroline earlier, here's what I think is going on here, and she said partly yes, partly no. Well, I'm going to take that on. I'm not going to argue why I think I'm right. Like I didn't write this on the slides, but this is really important. When I sit down for a session with anyone, I'm learning my client today. Even if I've worked with them 50 times before, I'm learning who they are and what's going on for them right now. So it's real time. And I'm calibrating and adjusting and all that sort of stuff. So let me just check back in with Caroline. Caroline, what are you noticing so far?
I'm noticing, so I'm a very kinesthetic person, and when someone's pushing through that deep layer, I get a feeling in my tummy. So I know something is shifting, not at an intellectual level, at that feeling of my core, and it feels a wee bit unnerving. The word vulnerability is coming up, and I think that's in connection with me not putting myself out there.
Got it. Well, I want you to just breathe for a second, Caroline. Because I thank you for being vulnerable with us about that. It's so interesting. My instinct, Caroline and I were sitting in this really quiet feeling with you guys. And then my instinct was that I needed to take the spotlight off her a little bit and talk to you guys. So I'm just when I'm in that space, on the one hand, when I'm in that insight-friendly space with someone, I want to hang out there for as long as possible, really. I'll tell you guys a story. I was working with a group. So I was invited to speak to the London Coaches and Therapists group that was being run by one of our Clarity coaches, Kathy Simmons. And there were about 40 people there. And the promise of the session was I was going to do a couple of coaching demos and then talk to them about impact and that sort of thing. So the first coaching demo, this woman called Viva, who I'd never met before, she had thought she's not a coach, or she wasn't a coach. Her friend had brought her to this, and she thought she was going to see a stand-up comedian. So she was obviously disappointed. But I said, okay, can I have a volunteer for coaching? And she put up her hand. I interviewed her about it later. She said, I thought, I'm going to show this clown, right? So she gets up to the front of the room, and I started asking her the questions, asking, what do you want? And that sort of thing. And all of a sudden, we just fell into the deepest connection, just felt so close. And so we're just sitting there. There's 40 people in the room. I'm sitting on a stool. She's sitting across from me. And we just felt this incredible connection. And so I'm just being with her in that feeling and waiting for guidance. So from time to time, I think maybe I should say something, because these 40 people have come to watch a coaching demonstration and we're sitting in silence. And so after about a minute, that occurs to me. And then this voice in my head just goes, shh. So I'm like, message received. So I give it another minute or two, and then I'm thinking, it's been quite a long time now. Maybe I should say something. And shh. So I'm just sitting there. 10 minutes pass in silence. And then tears running down her face. She goes, so it's all just a game? I said, yeah, you got it. She goes, thank you very much. And that was the end of the session. And half the group were like, that was amazing. And the other half of the group was like, what the fuck just happened? But I interviewed her afterwards. It's so interesting. She said, afterwards, she said, it's like she and I had a conversation for the full 10 minutes. And it changed her. She said afterwards that she'd spent years not feeling connected to herself or to anyone. And all of a sudden, she just felt reconnected with life. So I just trust that wisdom that tells me what to do. So when I was sitting quietly with Caroline, it was a beautiful feeling that we'd found our way into. And then I just got the hit. Oh, I need to let Caroline just sit for a bit. So I'll go talk to these guys for a bit. Oh, by the way, I should have told you guys, a coaching demo isn't exactly the same as what I would do if I was sitting one-to-one with someone for an hour, because first of all, we've got the group dynamic, which gives us a whole bunch of other stuff. And also we're doing 10 to 20 minutes. People are going to get whatever they get. When I'm working with one-to-one, it's typically 50,000 pounds is the starting point, and it's a year commitment and all that sort of stuff. So it's a very different context for working with them. But I love coaching demos. So this was really nice. And then when I asked Caroline, so what are you noticing? She said, yeah, I'm very kinesthetic. There was this feeling of something not putting myself out there. So I know it's likely for her, maybe there's something for her about being seen, whatever comes with that, and all that sort of stuff. So let's check in with Caroline again. Caroline, anything you want to share with us at this point?
Just what's coming to mind, and I'm very familiar with that feeling. That's how I know when someone's bypassing I call it the itty bitty shitty committee. Yeah. So that's how I know when they're bypassing that feeling in the tummy. But I think I'm noticing a connection, with that vulnerability and me almost being afraid or a wee bit of fear around stating what my truth is and where my grounding is and where I can kind of teach from or share from or coach from.
Yeah, I love you said that. I'm going to talk to these guys a little bit more. Thank you, Caroline. So what I heard Caroline say is, yeah, a little bit of fear about stating my truth and that sort of thing. So as soon as I hear someone say that, my guess is we're quite near the edge of the raft now, right? Remember I said, I want to find the edge of their map so we can jump in the water. Because if someone's afraid of something, typically they haven't explored it. They don't have it well articulated and that sort of thing. So I'm not recommending this approach, but I'm going to dive in and find out what's going on. So Caroline, what are you afraid would happen if you got out there and were visible and stated your truth in the coaching context and that sort of thing? What are you afraid would happen?
If I'm answering intellectually right now, and absolutely nothing.
Yeah, well, of course, I'm terrified of things that
Yeah.
have no context to them whatsoever. So I totally understand. But
Yeah.
if you're just being honest with,
Yeah.
here's the thing I love, Caroline. Here's the thing I really love. I know I'm kind of having a joke, but the fact that you were so willing to be present and kind of available for this conversation and to allow yourself to drop below that stuff and get into that place of, vulnerability. To me, that took courage and willingness. And I acknowledge that. Like I feel grateful that you felt able to go there with that. And it seems to me that what you just mentioned about a fear of being seen in that's so universal, Caroline. It's so universal because if you stop and think about it, our ego, our intellect, our itty bitty shitty committee, or whatever we call it, its job has been to try and keep us safe. And the thing is, all it ever knows about is the past. But your heart can see the future. Now, the thing about the past is because we've been there, we've got a lot of detail. But the heart knows what's possible for us, knows what's true for us, knows what's meaningful for us. And the heart is a big picture thinker. And so what I'd love to know, that thing you said, it's such a universal. What have you been afraid might happen if you were to speak your truth and share your beingness even further than you've already done it here? What are you afraid might happen if you put yourself out there? Honestly.
Hmm. Two things are coming to mind. One, and I can't get past that word, is exposure. And the other part that's coming to mind, and the reason I don't like saying it, is because it always feels a bit cliche, not being good enough.
Yeah, got it.
But it feels a bit cliche because it's like, yeah, you've worked on that. It's, you're good enough.
Yeah. Well, you're in the right place, Caroline. And funnily enough, those two things are very closely connected. By the way, like, if you're not on gallery mode, go onto gallery mode. Who can relate to that? The fear of not being good enough or exposure or that sort of thing. Okay, good. Because I'm going to tell you something real quick, then I'm going to leave you to cook with it, Caroline.
Mm-hmm.
So I was listening to this recording by Osho. Used to be the Bhagwan Rajneesh. There's a series about him on Netflix called Wild Wild Country. Anyway, I heard him doing satsang once on this recording, and someone asked him the question, said, "How can I become enlightened?" And he said, "You are already enlightened." He said, "You are all Buddhas pretending not to be. And it is my job to expose you." See, there are two flavors of good enough. Okay. I just started learning to play jazz guitar a few months ago. I'm pretty terrible at jazz guitar. I'm definitely not good enough at jazz guitar to be able to even to play rhythm in a jazz guitar trio at the moment. I'm not good enough at a skill capability level. Okay. So that's one flavor of being good enough, is, do you have the necessary skills? So for instance, if we look at the domain of sports, the domain of sports is typically has a league process for evaluating the skill level of people, right? So one flavor of good enough is, what's your skill level? But the other flavor of good enough is kind of interesting. I was on a course many years ago about double binds, and the trainer said, he said, you know, when children come into the world, they need to be sponsored into a community, into a tribe, into a family. He said, and he said, positive sponsorship involves the child getting messages like, you belong here. You belong here. And you're valuable. You matter. And your opinion counts. And you're here for a reason. And you're not only valuable, but you're enough. You have been born being already enough. You're important, just as you are. You don't have to change a thing to become important. You are already important and valuable and essential. You matter. So this was like 2006. And I was only a few years off the drink at that point. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, that is so American. I can't stand that sort of thing. Then he goes, now that's not the kind of sponsorship most kids get when they come in. He said, and some unfortunate kids, the kind of messages they get are that they're not good enough, but if they try hard, maybe one day they will be, or they don't matter, but if they accomplish enough, then maybe they will, or they don't belong, but if they try and adjust themselves, then they'll fit in, or they're not enough. They're not good enough. But if they just get better marks or a better job or whatever, then maybe one day they will be. I heard that. I was like, oh, I fucking recognize that. That was baked into my neurology. And so what I see a lot when people are following their hearts and wanting to do heart-centered work is they are confusing skill level and impact level and business skills and all that sort of thing with a deeper identity level knowing that who they are is already enough. Now, when it comes to knowing that you're already enough, that's not something that you can tell yourself in any convincing way. It's something you can only realize. But you have the capacity to realize it. You have an innate capacity for insight and realization that can allow you to discover for yourself the truth of your being, who you really are. And the moment you discover that, that's going to take a load off your mind. Because the truth of the matter, Caroline, is there's nothing you could do, nothing that has ever happened that could in any way diminish the truth of who you really are. And there's nothing that you could do or accomplish or do that would improve who you really are. Who you really are is already innate, is already whole, is already perfect and complete. And not just you, like everyone else too. All your clients, all your friends, everyone you ever met, everyone here, everyone in this world. It's already true for all of us. And we each have the capacity to discover that for ourselves. And there aren't enough skills or certificates or degrees in the world to make up for believing something about yourself that isn't true in the first place. So here's what I'm going to do, Caroline. I'm going to leave you to cook for a few minutes. I'm going to take a 1-minute comfort break, and then I'm going to come back and answer questions for up to about a half an hour. So if you guys have questions you want to ask me, get them ready. I'll be back in 1 minute. If you have questions for Caroline, ask them to me, and then I'll decide whether we're going to put them to Caroline, because she's still in a very open space and I want her to stay there. So I want to gatekeep any questions or anything.